Welcome to Enter the Quote. We have a new name.
Yeah, it's too late now to send in other ideas if you've got better ones.
It took quite a lot of back and forth to get to this one. We definitely wanted something with quote in the title that was going to be a bit more self-explanatory. Know what I mean? Felt a bit... it's a nice title, but it really didn't say anything about what we do. Enter the Quote feels like it captures what we do more.
My name's George.
My name's Oscar.
Yeah, there we go. I just realized you hadn't said your name. So yeah, I felt with this episode that we talked about a load of different aspects of freedom and what that means, rather than it being so much one cohesive point. There were quite a few little mini points and like little realizations about freedom and what that means and what it means to really have choice and have control over how you're living your life. So yeah, I thought there were some really nice little nuggets throughout this episode.
Really hope you enjoy the episode.
Let's get into it. So the quote I've chosen for this week is from Pythagoras, and it is, "Nobody is free who cannot control themselves." And I found that just throughout my life, freedom has actually been one of the core values that I've kept coming back to. You know, when I've wondered about why I'm doing things and tried to really distill things and like, why do I want this? Why do I want this? And so much of the time it seems to come back to freedom. And I actually had quite a significant change in how I think about it very recently, actually. So I was sat at my laptop and just going through this thing, which is to identify different weaknesses you have and like how to improve them. And one of the ones I was thinking was about, why don't I do the things that I know I should do? Sometimes, like, it could be something as little as just doing the washing up, and, you know, I see it and I'm like, I'll do it later or whatever. And, you know, I'm not really doing the thing that I feel I should do. And I was really trying to think, like, why is that? Why is it that I do that? And I found that actually one of the reasons, it seemed, was actually freedom. But it was more that I felt like I wanted to be free to just do what I felt like. Wanting to feel free to just do whatever's easiest. Wanting to feel free to just go and be lazy or just whatever's the easiest path in that moment. And that was then when I realized that there's kind of a distinction between these two things. There's like the freedom to just do what you feel like. And then there's the freedom to act in accordance with your values of what you feel is right, like what you think is the right thing to do versus what just feels like the easiest thing to do. And those have both very different outcomes, those two things, but they can feel similar. It can both feel like feel freedom, you know, freedom, you can say freedom is just doing whatever you want to do, whenever you want to do it. You could have that as a definition of freedom. Or you could have the definition be, no, freedom is about the ability to do the things that you think are the right thing to do. Either you have the power to do it, or you're not infringed by someone else in your ability to do those things that you think are the right things to do. And it's kind of like, you know, you've got like a poor man's version of freedom, which is just doing whatever you feel like. And, you know, I realized that actually there's a higher ideal there in freedom. And that is the part where having control over yourself comes in, because that is, you know, you're saying, no, this might be what I feel like, what feels like the easiest thing, but I'm gonna take control and I'm gonna make sure that I do the thing that aligns with my values or the thing that I feel is the right thing to do.
Well, just with what you were talking about there, actually, I'm quite focused at the moment on maintaining good habits, and it's an interesting area when it comes to freedom, because it definitely oscillates. My sense of kind of habit formation oscillates between feeling that, yeah, I'm prioritizing what I know to be good for me and what the kind of person I want to be and my values when I follow positive habits. And also it can feel quite restrictive as well at the same time. You know, like if I wake up, or actually I do kind of more of my habits in the evening, it tends to be, but like it will be like, here's the order of what I do before I go to bed. And it feels like this kind of regime. And it can feel quite restrictive because it's like, yeah, there's a tension. It's like a part of me thinks that freedom is just doing whatever I want to do any of the time. That's really what freedom is. And then when I'm following these habits and I'm doing sets of sit-ups or whatever it might be, it's like, I don't want to do this. I just want to continue to watch TV, or I kind of want to read a book before I go to bed. I don't want to have to do this now. And it feels quite restrictive. So there's definitely a tension between that kind of these views of what freedom is. One of the things that I was thinking about in relation to this was what you might call internal v external freedom. And I would say that internal freedom really links in with this sense of prioritizing what has value to you and choosing what has value to you over choosing what's convenient and easy at any particular time. And, you know, that includes the power to say no. I think it includes quite nicely summed up in the phrase, like, take it or leave it. You know, if I'm not internally free from this more mature perspective, it means when I have an impulse, I can't help but just do it. You know, if I see chocolate on the shelf, I just eat it. Like or, you know, I feel like having something sweet, and that's what happens. I feel like skipping my positive habits. That's what happens. I don't have any control. There's an impulse to do something, and I literally just do it straight away. But true or deeper internal freedom, I'd argue, is this sense of approaching things in life, things that you might have desire for or fear towards, and you get this sense of like, oh, I could take it or leave it. You know, if you see the chocolate on the shelf, like, oh, I could take it or leave it. It's not, I don't need to have that thing. I don't have the impulse compulsively do that thing. You're not too attached, really. You're like, oh, that might be nice, but if I don't have that, that's cool. That's all right. It's not a problem. You know, and I think I can imagine a lot of people listening have this as well. Like we know people or have seen people act in ways that is this kind of take it or leave it mentality in a positive way, where, you know, like having friends that you're feeling like a really strong desire to, you know, go for a drink, and you've got a friend who's just like, yeah, I could go to the pub. Like, I'm not bothered though. We can stay in and just like hang out or play games or whatever. Like, I'm not that fussed if we have a drink or not, you know, and it's like that for me, when I've seen that, is like, oh, that's freedom. They really have the freedom to choose. Whereas I don't. I feel compelled to do something, and it really hurts to not do that thing. That doesn't feel like freedom. Before we get back to the episode, if you're listening to the episode on Spotify right now, if you can literally just go on the app right now, and at the bottom you'll see a little tab of us playing. If you click on that and go to the top right hand corner, press the little dots, it will give you an option to go to podcast. If you go to podcast, get right to the top of the page, you'll see underneath where it says following, you'll see, hopefully, this isn't available to everyone, but you should see a little review bit, and you can just press on that and, well, rate us honestly. We prefer the 5-star ones, but, you know, it's cool. Just be honest. Yeah, that would be lovely if you could do that. That really kind of helps us to get a bit more exposure. Anyway, please enjoy the rest of the episode.
I like that idea of having the freedom to choose. So, you know, when you have those things of, you know, what you feel like doing or what aligns with your values, that is really where you have the freedom, because you have control over yourself, because you can take either of those paths. You can really choose in that moment, what is the path that I want to take? Whereas if you're just compelled to go down the easiest route every time, and that's always what you choose, then you don't have freedom, because you can't control what you're doing. You're just being, you're like a leaf in the wind, going along with whatever feels easiest and whatever you want to do at the time. And really freedom is being able to make an informed decision between however many options there are. And that really is freedom.
Yeah. And you're not restrained by your emotional response. Maybe restrained is not the right word, but you're not completely compelled by whatever you're feeling. So definitely in the early stages of me learning a habit, for example, or really growing that muscle of freedom, growing that muscle of choice, because it totally is like that. I really feel like that. It's like every time I feel very strong desire towards something that I know isn't good for me, and I and it feels very, very strongly in my body that I want that thing. It's like I'm being pulled towards that thing magnetically, and I choose to not do it. There's like, you can feel the growth. It's almost like it's in real time. I think with certain things, because the emotion is so strong. And I think in a way I guess it's a little bit like lifting weights or whatever. Like the heavier the weight, the more you'll grow, the more you'll like build your body. It's like the kind of the potential, the effect of that catalyst of that choice it's like the emotion is so strong that if you withstand that emotional pull, the level of freedom that you actually gain from that, the level of freedom to choose, is equally as strong. It's somehow like that. That's kind of the image that I get with it, is this kind of this equal strength. It's like every time that a real true choice is made beyond whatever you're emotionally pulled towards doing, you're building the strength to choose, which is freedom. And that's such an amazing experience, I think, to see that. I think like we all have our things that we feel very strongly compelled to do, and I'm sure everyone knows it's just like, if you withstand that thing, if you really choose to not do it, that it feels amazing afterwards. Like after you've made that choice and you're kind of out of the woods, it's like pretty amazing.
It feels liberating, which is tied to freedom. Really, it's like it's a freedom from this track of what you were gonna do, or what would have been the easiest thing to do. I've found actually one of the things that's kind of got me tripped up with this feeling of freedom before as well is wanting to keep my options open, wanting to be able to do anything, to be like, I don't want to tie down or commit to anything because I want to be able to keep the options open. And I think that's just, part of my personality, that I can end up getting kind of caught up in that. But really the problem with that is that time keeps moving. As you're still doing things, not making a choice is still a choice. It's not like you're just there and all the options still stay open in the same way. As soon as you're choosing not to pursue a path, you're limiting your ability to go back and do that path. You can't start from where you were when you first thought about it. And I think that that's, an important part of maturing, especially something that I've really had to do, is being okay with every single time that you make a decision and you choose between two or more paths, you're cutting off all of those other possibilities forever. You don't have those options again. And that can be quite a thing to really come to terms with, at least that I've had to come to terms with. I was looking up the definition of decision. So it's a Latin word, de is off and scission is cut. And it really is that. It's like cutting off these other possibilities. And that's what you're doing. And if you're trying to keep yourself open and keep all the possibilities on the table, it just doesn't work, because the possibilities will still diminish anyway. You need to make those decisions and feel free to choose what you want to do. And I looked up also the definition of freedom, and that is the power or right to act, speak, or think as one wants. And in order to act how or speak or think how you want, you really need to know what you want. And that can be something that, well, if what you want is freedom, then that's going to stop you from acting, because you're just trying to like keep everything open. So I feel that's kind of like a little loop that I kind of have caught myself in sometimes. That being my desire is freedom, but that's not really a thing. If that's what you want is just freedom, it's like too vague. You could want to feel more free or cultivate that ability to make decisions and choose what you want to do with your life. But you really need to know that component of like, what is it you actually want? And that is what will give you the ability to make decisions.
I guess this is a good time to talk about internal and external freedom, because I think that, as seems to happen sometimes, there's freedom, it has multiple meanings, probably deserves to have multiple words, really. I think in a way, the freedom to choose experience, which I would kind of put life decisions as in I'm choosing to experience my life at university or I'm choosing to experience my life in a job. You're choosing between different experiences in that case. Whereas internal freedom isn't really based on choosing between different experiences. It's choice itself in a way. It's having the ability to choose, not choose what experience to have, but the very act of choice in itself. So not just being swept up in whatever you're doing. Say, for example, like with the university thing, a lot of people didn't choose to go to university. A lot of people went to university because that's what everyone else did. It wasn't really a choice. It might have seemed externally like you're kind of choosing an experience, but in a way, there wasn't really a choice there because there wasn't the ability to make a choice properly. You know, the pressure, the peer pressure of other people doing this thing, the fear involved in being left behind, not knowing what you were doing, meant that, oh, okay, I'm just going to go to university now. So in a way that there seems to be quite different things going on in terms of the sort of external choosing one's experience and the very act of choice in itself. You know, an example I can give of that, I guess, is like a lot of people would say that a monk or a nun, they're not free, you know, because there's so many seeming limitations on life. You know, they can't have children, they can't have family, sex, alcohol, certain foods. You know, if you're like a cloistered nun, you live in a very small environment. You're kind of constrained, constricted in every possible way in terms of your experience. Your experience is extremely limited. And yet, the idea with that is that your ability to choose in a deeper way is enhanced completely. You're not just led by desire, that, you know, fear and desire, which most of us are. I mean, I am, you know, like, and the subtlety of fear and desire that I'm led by may be different to the subtlety someone else is led by, but it's still led by it. It just, it might be after like years of practicing Buddhism that the level of subtlety of how I'm led becomes smaller, but it's still totally there. You know, I make some choices every day, but most of the things I do aren't a choice. They just happen.
One thing that I was actually thinking of with making choices about what you do and being free was like, I was thinking this a little while ago. I was like walking down the road and I kind of felt like I wanted to skip. It was like quite a nice sunny day, and for some reason that just kind of came into my mind. And I didn't do it, but I remember thinking like, well, kind of thinking about it in retrospect, that was an example where I didn't feel fully free because there was something that I wanted to do, but I didn't have the control over myself to actually do that, because you can kind of impose these restrictions on yourself. I have the right to express myself and I have the right to skip down the street. Like there's no, you know, there's literally no legal ramifications for skipping down the street.
And you live in Brighton.
Yeah, exactly. It's not
so
like
if you're in any city in the world, it's just like,
it wouldn't be that surprising. I mean, there's a guy who lives near my mum, who all year round he skates around on rollerblades with his top off, listening to music, and like singing along. And he does this I think he must do it every day because I see him so much. And he'll do this like even in winter. He's just rollerblading down the street, singing out loud, topless.
Yeah, and he's got, you know, he's got like quite a belly on him as well.
Yeah.
It's not like he's
seen him
like,
as well.
Yeah, he's not like a muscly kind of Californian.
It's not like a showing off thing. Yeah,
like he just doesn't give a fuck, or he completely seemingly he has the ability to choose, or the pressure of kind of fitting in is just so not there for him that but then, you know, you don't know people's experience though, do you? Because it's like, it could be, I honestly don't think this is the case. So if this guy is listening, then this isn't what I think of you, but this is just like a possibility that actually this person feels totally restrained and not free by the desire to be noticed. You know, like, and that's just such a foolproof way of getting noticed. You're going to get noticed more doing that than having like a Lamborghini, like some mad fucking sports car. Like you're literally everyone will look at you. even like people who see you all the time will still look at you because, you know, like you're topless in in January, you know, skating down the road, you know, it's just like
and singing,
listening to music, whatever.
Yeah.
So but then, you know, it's like it could be that actually, even though in an external sense, societal level, this person's being free seemingly, internally, no, they're not, because it's like it's so important to be noticed for, you know, one's identity and ego that they've just found the ultimate way of doing it, and they just can't help it, you know, and that's just always how it's been. So you don't know. I don't think that is the case, but difference between external again and kind of more internal or first person subjective freedom.
Yeah.
I felt like that story was going to lead somewhere, and then as in like that it was part of a point you were making, but then we just ended up talking.
Which one? I think I was just talking about skipping down the road, wasn't I?
Oh yeah, right.
Yeah, that was it. I didn't skip down the road.
No,
but no. I was thinking that this was an example of that kind of disconnect between not having control over yourself, basically, you know, not feeling free, even though you have the external permission. So in that definition of freedom, it says the power or right to act, speak, or think as one wants. So there's two parts to that, really. It's like having the right to express yourself freely, but also you need the power to do that. And that can be, you know, your own power of control over yourself. The fact that, you can, you know, if you want to wear certain clothes or whatever, you know, you've got the right to do that. But do you have the power and the control over yourself and the freedom to really do that, to really be able to do those things that you want to do? And that just kind of encapsulated it for me.
It makes me think of because as I get older, I give less and less of a shit about appearances, it seems, which is nice. And that, I think that's just quite natural growing up as well. Like, so I wear a helmet when I go cycling, you know, and like I wear a high vis as well. And it's like, I know that, say when I'm in Brighton and I'm kind of cycling through Brighton wearing my high vis, I know a lot of people around in Brighton because I grew up there, you know, so I'm aware of, if I go past someone I know wearing my full safety kit, it's kind of like, I feel awkward, you know, I feel like I'm kind of not fitting in, and, you know, or like, maybe this isn't very cool. But then it's kind of like, then I think of, well, what the fuck does it mean to be cool? Because when I see people who are like stony faced, they would never, you know, wearing like safety kit on your bike, even though it can be, you know, helpful to not get hit, it's like they would never do it because they're not free to do it on some level, because their reputation is just too important and they would get ridiculed for it, right? And I remember that pressure because I, you know, obviously do graffiti, and it's like you get that a lot in kind of graffiti circles because it's very like, it's a young scene. Like, you know, you start doing it when you're a teenager for often like identity reasons, wanting some sort of tribe, So you still get it in kind of graffiti circles well into your adulthood. You can see how much someone wants to be able to express themselves more fully, but they're not able to. Even as far as I refuse to like try a certain style of graffiti for fear of like ridicule or whatever. I find it interesting, like where are the chains, you know, like where are the things that actually restrain and restrict us? Because they can be quite like, you might not notice them, but if you're like failing to act in the way that you want to act in a positive sense, it, you know, it gets more complicated if you're a massive arsehole. But if you're restricting, say, the kind of art that you want to do for fear of ridicule, that's not freedom. There is, and that hurts. It's a limitation. It's not nice to be put in a box in that way, and to not feel like you're able to kind of express yourself. But then as I'm learning to kind of open myself up, I'm aware that like I'm not cool anymore to these people. I'm doing graffiti and they see me like wearing a fucking high vis and a helmet while I'm cycling. That's so uncool. You know, like it just is. But at this point, I don't really care. Like it. Oh well, my freedom's worth more than my street cred. Basically, it's just like it just is. You know,
and that's the thing. That means as well, you're going to resonate more with people who are like that as well. because there's people like me who will think it's much cooler to not care that you look like a bit of a dork on your bike than to
Yeah.
like risk your safety because you think it looks cooler like that. Like that's much cooler that you can withstand that social pressure or whatever it is, you know, like that means that the people who share those sorts of values are going to think that you're cooler for that, for the very things that other people will not, you know. So
it's funny how it changes in time.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I think that's a good place to move on to next week's quote.
Yes. The quote for next week is by Andy Benoit. Most geniuses, especially those who lead others, prosper not by deconstructing intricate complexities, but by exploiting unrecognized simplicities. It's been a pleasure. As always, thank you so much for listening and have a wonderful week.
Peace.